Hello everyone, my name is Tiffany. I'm the Tipsy Artist. Today we are painting this super cute monogram heart. It's like a wooden distressed heart for fall. So it has lovely little fall elements all around the edges, has a distressed kind of like old wooden shiplap look happening here behind the monogram. And we have this in a painting kit and we can customize it with any initial that you need. So this gives you a look at the large size that we do in our big painting classes that we do at our studio when you come paint with me in person. And then we also have an adorable painting kit size. So I'm going to show you that over, trying to find a place to lay that. Could be interesting. It's kind of crowded around here. All right, so we have a 9x12. Actually, this is an 8x10, but in the painting kit, it will be a 9x12. So I've enlarged the size for everybody. Here's my puppy dog. All right, but I want to talk about the line art. So every painting kit has line art that comes with it, so that you do not have to know how to draw. That's already done for you, and it comes with the transfer paper and then all of your supplies for painting and even the transfer process. So we even have a little tape in there for you too. So we're going to talk about how to get this set up, and then we're going to switch camera views and you're going to get to watch me paint this step by step. All right, so initially you'll have your canvas, and again, your canvas will be larger than mine. This is just an 8x10. I'm trying to use up some extras that I had. But we're going to take the transfer paper. First step, very important. Make sure that the shiny black side faces the canvas. That will be what transfers the image to the canvas. And I just center it. And I only tape up at the top. That's really important. I make sure that these sides are free so that I can constantly lift and check my work while I trace, just to make sure that I get all the details transferred over. All right, so transfer paper goes down first. Then our line art goes over the top. Again, it is also just centered on top of the canvas. And because your canvas is 9x12, you're going to have plenty of room to negotiate around the edges to make sure it's centered. So you'll have that done. And then again, just tape here and here. Then your kit comes with a pencil. So you'll use this to trace. Basically, you just, every place you see a line, you're just going to draw right over the top and apply that pressure. And when you do, it transfers over to the canvas. So initially it will look like a pencil line on there. It's a light, so it gives you some variety. Like if you like that lighter style, you can keep that. I also include a permanent marker in your kit so that you can do a hard line over the top. I went ahead and did a hard line over the top today, so that this is, I also like this for beginners, that really keeps your trace secure and in place. It bleeds through the paint a little bit so that you don't lose it. So it's very helpful for beginners. So if you're a little bit nervous about losing your trace, I highly recommend using your permanent marker to have it set up this way. So I do a little bit more additional work, and I go over every line with the permanent marker. All right, so once we're done here, and again, be very cautious before you untape, because we had this in position and it was exactly over the line where we were working. So you want to make sure you get every single detail. There's a lot in this one. So really double check several times, make sure you get it all in there. And then once you feel really confident that you've transferred everything, then you can lift this off, because it is pretty much impossible to get it lined up exactly where it was before. So I've double, triple checked. And so now I can go ahead and lift all of this off, and I can just toss this. We're done with that. And then we're going to go ahead and start to paint. So this is exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and switch camera views here. And here we go. All right. I'm going to get up here. I've got all my supplies out. All right, it's getting a little bit settled. Okay, so I've got a color view here for you to see, and your kit does come with a color image as well to constantly reference while we're working. We've already used our pencil and our permanent marker, so we're going to go ahead and place this off to the side. You will have a paint kit Mine's a little bit used today. That's okay. I like to reuse mine and use them up. They definitely last for more than one painting. So using mine up. Got our brushes here, our napkins, our paint. I've got a little bit that I've already placed out early ahead of time, but I've got my little plates. And again, all that comes in your kit. The only thing you really need to make sure that you get that's not in the kit is the water and whatever container you want to put your water in. Just make sure it's something, you know, kind of big and sturdy. So I've got a nice heavy bucket here nearby, you know, cup works just fine. And then we're all ready to go. So let's talk about our brushes here really quick. We've got, this is my mama brush here. And then I have little buddy, little square flat top brush. And then I have a little bit brush. This is what we use for the small details, the lining, that kind of thing. Your brushes will be new. Mine, of course, are very loved, very used. Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off this. All right. So when you go to use your paints here, the first time you use them, yours will be new. So there's going to be like a silver foil liner that's going to be on top. You will need to lift that off so that the paint will flow freely through there, of course. And then whenever you're done getting paint out, you want to make sure and recap. Acrylic paint does set up and dry pretty quickly, so it's very important to always recap those after every single use whenever you squirt out some on your plate here. And to begin with here, we're going to go ahead and get started with some of this background work. So I'm going to be using, and actually this is perfectly new. Yes, this gives you an example of what it will look like new. Okay, so this is our titanium white. We're going to go ahead and start with a dollop of white here on the plate. And then we're also going to start with some Mars Black. Just like a quarter-size dollop of each of those. And then we'll also be using some primary yellow and also some cadmium orange. And with these other warmer tones, you can just start with like a, you know, dime to nickel size dollop of each one of those. All right, so I'm going to start to mix up a little bit here. Now, when I go to use my brush for the first time, yours will be new, so I always recommend putting it into the water just a bit, getting it moist, and then I'm going to go ahead and dry off. That way it is flexible and moist, but I do dry off the excess water out of there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pick up a nice big dollop of the white. And by the way, as we're teaching here, this is going to be pre-recorded by the time y'all watch it. So if I go a little fast, you can always, it's so easy to rewind or pause and then restart. So always feel free to do that as well. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and take just a tiny, I'm just going to barely touch into the black. Super tiny amount here. We're going to work that into my white. We're going to get a really pretty, very, very light gray. That's going to be our base here. And then sometimes I would like to warm this up with just a little bit of brown. So I'm going to go ahead and place this into the water while I'm doing a little bit of mixing over here. I've got little buddy. I'm going to pick up a little dollop of this orange and then a little touch of the black. We're going to start to work that in. And that makes brown. So again, that's orange and black makes brown. So I like to have a little bit of that to dip into. Let's get that ready. I'm going to rinse out here. We're going to clean off this brush. So let's talk about cleaning a little bit. So rinse, rinse, rinse. Circular motions, firm pressure into the water, and then check. And then when it's clear, let that rest off to the side. A little dab. We're going to go right back into that gray, so I don't have to be too careful about the cleaning in here. All right, now I'm also going to add, we got a little bit of cream happening here, so I'm going to take a little touch of this bright primary yellow. We're going to add that into my gray, and that kind of brings in a bit of a creamy touch to it. All right, and then a little touch more of the white. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little wash of this over the heart. Just vertical strokes back and forth. You can also add a little bit of water to this to help make it freely flow into those pores of the canvas. And you can see already immediately how I'm able to do this with a lot of ease and not worry too much about all my tracing, because I did do it in the permanent marker, and so it's just bleeding right through that paint. And if for some reason you're a little bit heavy-handed and you're covering over that and it's making you a bit nervous, you can add a little bit of water to it to thin it out. And then it should go right back to a little bit more of a translucent covering to allow that line work to just bleed right through. So this is a great way to work in the beginning here. Again, all my line work is still very easy to see, and I'm getting some nice coverage over the surface area of that canvas. All right, so there's a beautiful little creamy color that we have going on here. That's very lovely. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and rinse out now. And dry off a little bit here. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my mama brush. We're going to do like a firm press here into the brown. And I'm going to go over this line here. So I'm going to hold the brush just like you'd hold a pencil. Go over that line work. This basically represents the lines in that weathered wood. Okay. Really pretty. Rinse out. Always make sure and clean your brushes when you get done using them. Again, acrylic paint sets up and dries very quickly. You can turn your brushes into sticks. We don't need sticks, we need brushes. So protect your brushes, keep them clean. And let's see here. Now I'm going to go to my little bit brush here. Do a little touch into the water, a little touch into this gray, and you can do a little, I'm gonna do a little bit more black now, but just a hint more of a darker charcoal gray here. Grab a little bit of water. Now I'm gonna do a little twirl here into that paint. And I'm just gonna gently pull up and then lift off with a light hand. And we're just doing little vertical strokes into the wood. So this represents some of that line work that we see in old weathered wood. I'm just doing tiny little vertical strokes here, light, gentle hand. You just want to act like you're barely touching the canvas. And then we had a little bit of this little, almost feels like a little parentheses. This was actually part of the trace. It looks like a little bit of that wood grain where that knot in the wood was showing. So I'm just reinforcing that. You can do more of those too if you want. So for example, it would look like little parentheses or parentheses, and then echo that. A comma touch right in the middle. Another little line coming up from that. And we'll do the same thing over here. So again, like little parentheses, echo that again. So a few of those little knots in the wood just gives it a fun, look, painterly look of that stylized knot in the wood, which is fun to add in. All right, rinsing out now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start to work in some of the beautiful colors with our pumpkins and our flowers and all those fun things. Okay, so initially here, I'm going to be using some Cadmium Red. So we need to go ahead and squirt this out. Again, about a nickel-sized dollop would be great, just about that much. I've been painting a lot today, so I have some colors already out. I've got some red out. So we're going to go ahead and take the Mama brush to start with here. And I'm going to go ahead and touch into this red. And then I had some orange out earlier. I'm going to add a little touch of that orange to that too, to kind of warm it up a little bit. And then in this rose, I'm going to go ahead and do like a half circle here, press, half circle. We're just going to get that color into the background initially. And I'm going to squeegee off the rest of the paint. I'm going to let Mama rest in the water until I go to clean her off in a little bit. I'm going to also start to fill into some of these pretty little leaves here. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more orange this time with a little touch of that red and a little bit of yellow to warm it up even more. Lighten this up just a little bit. And then I'm going to have this come into this little leaf nearby. So again, I'm using my little buddy brush here. And go ahead and work this into some of those little leaf shapes off to the side. We're just getting that first layer of color. And with some of these little points, like it can be a little detailed. So if that gives you some concern, you want a lighter hand, finer point, do a little twirl here in with a little bit brush, and you can work into those little points. And this will help you have a lot more precision as you go into those small points of that shape. And a little hint here, as you're working out into the outer perimeter of the shape, like over in this area, when it gets out into that other wood grain, if you happen to have a little bit of, oops out in here, not even a big deal, because we're going to be coming in with that darker charcoal gray or black, mixture of both. And so you can do a little bit of cleanup work later when you're working in with that too. So you don't have to be too careful. You do on this inside, because we've already we put in all of our light cream. That's much lighter. We want to preserve that. But in regard to everything outside of those boundaries of this floral work here, you can certainly relax a little bit on that. So I'm coming in here with, again, this is my little bit brush, doing those edges. Do that little twirl, that'll give you that nice fine point. Again, yellow, orange, red. If I can give a little buddy again. First layer of paint. These are all my little fun leaf shapes here. And you can do make sure and do a little bit of firm press in here too, because you want to make sure your edge stays nice and thin when you're coming into these tips here of the leaf. I'll go after a little bit here again. We've got some tinier areas to work into. Again, red, orange, yellow. Get that little twirl into the paint. A little more yellow for these. All right, and another little look around here. And then this one gets really light. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a lot of yellows. That's my base. Right. Now, while I've got my little bit brush and my yellow, and there's still that little hint of orange in there, that peachy quality. I'm loving that, don't mind that at all. So I'm going to keep that going. And we're going to do a first coat on my sunflower here. So I'm going to go ahead and work in this with a little bit, and I'm just going to get those petals in there. Have a few more popping up in here. We're going to take this all the way around. So we let the tiny tip of little bit go into that tiny tip of the petal, and then we'll pull towards the center. And we have more layers to do, so I know there's a lot of line work showing. That is okay. This is just the first layer, so we're all good here. Touches with that bright yellow. It's almost like get a nice little dollop of that yellow on the tip, and it just kind of barely touch down. Then I'll leave a nice thick textural dollop of that right on the surface area. Right, another area where we need it to be very light and peachy is our pumpkin down here. So we've got that with our yellow and our orange. Yellow. Really lighten that up. And we're going to place this into a pumpkin here. Right. Great foundation. Another place for this light orange is right in here. So I'm gonna do a little, this looks like you make a little donut shape. All right, looking around here. Let's see, let's go ahead and rinse out. All right, let's grab a little bit more of this yellow. And I'm going into that light gray we initially mixed up and some white and some yellow. Let's do a little bit white. I'm going to use this for this pumpkin right up in here. Then we're using a little bit brush and just holding it like a pencil, getting that first layer of paint into that little shape. Let's grab a lot more yellow here and work into this rose. Get that first layer of color in. All right, so I'm going to start to work into my roses a little bit here. And I've got my brown nearby, so I'm going to do a little, using a little bit, I'm going to do a little touch into that brown, do a little twirl into it, get a nice fine point. And then we're going to follow our trace and just kind of work into that wet red paint there. And the stroke kind of makes it feel like you do a little parentheses and kind of wiggle the hand as you go. And then we're going to follow along the edge here. Take this all the way around. I'm going to rinse out. Little touch of white. And we're just going to echo what we just did, but with the white this time. Kind of follow around it. This brings in a little bit of highlight over the top of the petals. And then you can always come back in with a little bit more of this vibrant yellow too. Just gently kind of sweep that on. And it feels like you do like little half circles. And back in a little bit of brown again. Just gonna sweep that in. And then a little comma, like comma there. With the brown right in the center. Also got a little bit of that brown on my brush and do a little bit of that shadow here. Very gentle little outline and then a little shadow in there. And then a little shadow here. With just the brown. All right, while we still have this color, basically it's our yellow, it's a little bit of brown. I'm going to do just a little bit of touching over the top of this red here, little half circles, very gentle. I'm going to come in with my white. We're gonna do a little squish, a little kind of circle here. Make that little pattern. We're just gonna follow those lines of our trace. We're gonna come back in with the red. And just little half circles. Just work that around the shape of those. You'll get a nice soft mix with that white. That's my puppy dog making all that noise. All right, so it's kind of a fun little half circles. Let's go ahead and get a layer on this little pumpkin here. So we have, we're going to do some turquoise for that. So I'm going to go ahead and use this Viridian. Place it right by the white. Use a little bit here and work into that. Just a little bit of water. Work this into that shape. Very pretty. So now I'm going to make a dark line in between. So I'm going to grab just a little bit of black now. This is the Viridian and the white. So it's like that gray occurs and then that little mix of the Viridian mixes in there with it. This is what we'll use for our shadow. Do a little twirl into that color. And then we'll hold the brush like a pencil and we'll echo over those lines, that curved line. That's going to be that shadow. All right, beautiful. And the same color, I'm going to go ahead and have it be my little stem down here, the little top of my stem. Do a little tiny rectangle there. Take a little bit of water and a finer point. So I'm going to do a little twirl. And the crease, the little lines. And then take the same color with a little bit of brown. We're going to mix those two together. Brown, and then we had our brown mixed up here. And again, recap on that. Brown is orange and black. Need more of that. And then this was our black and our white and our Viridian. Then I've taken some brown and I've mixed that in with that darker shade. And I'm going to go ahead and line this out here. And then we're going to add a little bit of white to that. A little bit of water, twirl into that paint, get a nice little point, and then we'll work into that little stem. And then get that darker crease in there one more time. Little twirl here. And we'll darken this up. Pretty pretty. Okay. And then, well, we've still got this little twirl again, add a little bit of water, do that little twirl so you get a nice fine point. And then we'll go ahead and do our little creases here too. Sometimes you have to keep coming back in for that little twirl to get it back to a fine point. And if it does get a little too thick, then you can always rework in the solid color happening in the center again, which I'm going to do a little bit here. And here's my stem. I'm going to darken that up. Rinse out. Come back into this lighter shade again. A little water. And get right back into that center part there. Wet to wet paint, you'll also get a nice soft transition between the two, which is nice. A nice soft blend is really pretty. And then come back in with a little bit more dark, a little twirl. I waved at my honeyberries out of the window looking at me. He's out there looking. Little light lines that happen. And I can a little bit of light. My dog drinking water. Now we're going to reinforce that stem. A little curve. Have a little bit of black here. All right, now I'm going to come in with a little bit of that brown. I need to mix more. It's orange and black. And I'm going to do a little center here of my sunflower. A little touch right there in the middle. And we have a little brown. A little twig here. Some of these I'll have to rework over the top of the black, but I'm going to go ahead and get that in place so that I don't lose it when I do the black twig in the back. Now we're going to use more of our brown and my little bit brush, and we'll do a little floral into that, add some water to it, nice fine point. And then over the bottom of this pumpkin, I'm going to go ahead and reinforce those lines. Twirl it in there every time. So with each layer of paint that comes in over the top, you can see how those black lines, they're helping to add some of that essential shadow. And then they're also just becoming obscured by the layer of paint that's coming in over the top. So again, that's why it's really much more of a help to beginners. This very simple type of painting in the beginning is really nice. All right, and we didn't lose our little lines on our leaves. So I'm going to come back in. We're going to use some of that brown again, a little twirl. Again, let's mix up a little more orange, black. If you want to warm it up even more, you can have a little bit of yellow. Add a little bit of water. A little twirl. I'm going to go over those little lines. So these little lines, basically, they feel like just one center line right down the middle, and then it's a diagonal and a diagonal on each side. We're going to keep twirling into that paint so you get a nice fine point. And then in between, then you can also warm up a little bit with, we're going to go back in with that peachy color. A little twirl into that. Still have a little bit of brown on my brush, and there's a little mix in there, that's okay. So you can do a little touch in between each line. See how that also adds a nice little highlight. So tiny little touches in between the lines, little tiny dashes is what it feels like, a color. A dash, dash, dash. Pull that down. Then this is that peach mixed with that brown. Do the same thing up here. Okay, just like little dashes in there. We'll do a little line. How about this is that peach, which is orange and yellow. We'll do just like a soft curved line right through the middle. And then we can do little diagonal lines on either side. Grab a little bit more of this little peach. And just kind of do a little touches of that diagonal on each side here. Provide some of that fun texture. Do another little touch of the peach up here. It's good to get another little layer of paint in there. And a little touch of yellow, brighten that up a little bit over here. Little peach, and again, little diagonal. Rinse out, we're going to come back in with more of that detailed brown. So I'm going to do a little twirl into the brown there. So a little bit of water with it, a little twirl. And we're going to do that little line right through the middle there, like that, see? And this starts to kind of work into that little peach and a little outline around that. So it's softly kind of mixing with that wet peach that we just laid down. So I'm gonna do a little diagonal swirl there. Little touches. So again, line right through the middle and then diagonal, diagonal. Now this is an echo of what we just did, but now with that brown. So it like softly blends in with what we just did. Again, swirl into the paint. And then line in the middle. And then little diagonals. So it overlaps over that peach that we just did, has like a soft blend in with it. Line into the middle. And then diagonal, diagonal. And that peach is still wet. So you still see a nice little layer of it and then a soft blend with the brown that we're doing. Swirl with that brown. This one, we're going to come around the edges. And just very, delicate little brown that goes through there. You up here. So you can continue to have a few more layers of this if you want to. It's looking very lush and full of color. All right, let's see. I'm gonna go back into that brown here, with the water brown, and I'm gonna start to outline just little touches of depth around our sunflower here. So echoing the trace where you see those little black lines kind of peeking through. Pull that to a nice fine point. And then we'll grab a bit more on the very tip here, and I'm going to do a little tap, tap, tap around that circle. Tap, tap, tap. That adds some nice little texture there. Rinse out. Go right back into a little bit of this orange and that peachy color. And we're going to do another little tap, tap, tap here. Make sure that's nice and bright. We're going to get back into that brown and do another little tap, tap, tap right in the center. Tap out that little circle. All right. Now we can have fun doing a few of these little red, there's some red flowers that happen, which are really fun. We're going to use the, let's use the base here of, I'm use this one. So with this technique, I use the end of the handle and I'm going to dip into the red just like that. And I can just start to do lots and lots of these, very playful. And if you want to make it a little bit bigger, make some kind of delicate, and you can also use a bigger brush, like we can use the mama brush and make the berry quite a bit bigger too. That's another option. Let me show you that. You can see the difference. All right, so this is a bigger brush, so it's got the bigger tip on the end. And so the berries are a little bit more pronounced. Just like that. And I just continue to add. You can make this very full. If you're done, just dry off. I'll do a few more, and then I need to start working into the background because a lot of this flows out over the top of the background. So I'll need to do that after we work that in first. So I'm going to do a few more just to give a little reference to this here. All right, now we're going to start to work into that charcoal gray happening in the background. So this is our black and our white. You can have a little bit of one of this. Long vertical strokes here. Also, to reinforce this, you can do more like thick black right in the middle over that line. I'll grab a little bit to do it here. And even if these lines get, fairly obscured while you're doing this, this is really easy to come back in and do this over the top when we're done too. I'm just making a little reference here. It's out. Black's very overpowering, that's why I rinsed down, even though the color is very similar. If I don't, it can be so overpowering that I'll obscure all that black that I just did. So I'll come back in here. A little bit of careful cutting work. If you need your smaller little kiddo brushes to do that, certainly can. And then you just pull down to those vertical strokes. Now this gets pretty tight in here, so I'm gonna do a little bit. And just little touches in between those leaves there. You only want to use it for those small little areas, and then you want to get back to your mama here and then do the pull down work so you can keep your texture nice and pretty, or it's not streaky. You have the nice opaque coverage too. Those little white striations are happening. That's a nice look. It's like an old weathered wood. I'm going to use the little buddy in this little section since it's kind of small. So do the careful cutting work. I have to kind of turn the head of the brush. And next to that little leaf. And then once I've got that cut in, then I'll go ahead and start to pull down in that vertical stroke. And this is that little twig that we did. We'll have to reinforce that over the top. Feather that out in that vertical stroke, pull that down. A nice little cut in around the leaf. And then follow up with that vertical stroke to give that wood grain look. This is white, titanium white, Mars black. And this is an area where I definitely need to come back in and do more of those berries over the top. So we'll hit that at the end. We'll be working in our little twigs and our berries at the end. I'm gonna come in, so a little bit, let's go into that tiny little area. I see another one coming up. I'm just gonna go ahead and paint over these because I know where they're at. I'm gonna touch those later. They're gonna be super easy to do with our little dot technique here. This is white and black. Mix those two together, make a dark charcoal gray. Feather those strokes down, vertical strokes. That rose. Touch right there to hold my canvas in place. I'm going to do a little turn here for better positioning, so I'll have it upside down for just a little bit. Again, titanium white, Mars black. Mix those two together. Do a little bit of that in here. So clearly that different direction like that does not look like wood grain. So again, cutting works fine, but then remember to kind of go back over it and reinforce that vertical stroke, feather that in when you're done. We're working on getting all the coverage first, but the positioning of the brush strokes is going the wrong direction. It looks unnatural with the wood grain. So again, remember, whenever you're done doing that cut in, go back in that long vertical stroke to get that back in place. And you can see I'm having a little bit of an overlap sometimes on these leaves. I'm going to hit those leaves again with another layer of paint to have those pop out over the top of the background in a little bit. So they're going to be just fine. And since we have a lot of that charcoal gray happening near that pumpkin, I'm going to come in with a little bit more of a darker black in here to create more contrast between the background and that pumpkin. Pull that through. Getting in near those sunflower petals, so it's getting pretty little in there. So I'm gonna do a little bit brush, little twirl, and get that little tiny precise cutting look here. And around the pumpkin, really just pure black. Right in there, and around that stem. Pure black around that for contrast around the stem. Go ahead and do all this cut in here first. And just doing this with more of the pure black. Those stems are so dark and I don't want to lose them with that charcoal gray being so light next to it. We want that contrast. So that's looking good. They're still popping out, so that's what we needed. Let's pick a little bit more water. Let's vertical strokes. Let's go ahead and turn it back. So we've got our background. This is looking great. Okay. That old weathered, blackish charcoal gray wood. Go ahead and hurt a little bit here. Oh, I'm sorry, that was Mama. Give her a bath. Give her a baby bath. Round and round and round. No pressure. Okay. Let's see here. All right, so now let's reinforce some of this little bits of fun that come out over the top. So I'm going to start with, let's get some of this brown again. And a little bit of yellow to brighten it up. So I want it to really stand out over the top. Do a little twirl. Oops. So. Twirl out. We have this little branch basically that's coming here, and then I'm going to do a little diagonal twirls that come out over the top. It's very nice. So again, this is that yellowish brown. A little twirl and then lift off with a light hand. This is a little bit, do a little twirl, lift off with a light hand. It kind of rotates out to a nice fine point. So a little twirl. So this is coming out over the top of the black. So again, it brings that plant life into the foreground. So a little twirl, lift off with a light hand. Grab more yellow, orange. And twirls. Just barely kind of act like you're touching the canvas so that it's that paint just kind of rests right on top. And when you lift off, it's important to do that little, go twirl it and then lift off with the light hand, and it tapers it off to a nice fine point. So I have a lot of this work to do out of the edges here, because we need all of this, all these leaves to basically flow out over the top here. So this is our orange and a little bit of yellow and brown. So touch back in a little red. And going back into that orange, brown, a little bit of yellow, making it very light. Still using little bit brush. I'm going to turn the canvas just a little bit because I want a different angle over here. So I'll do a little twirl and then pull out to the side. This is more that brown again. Want it to come out over the top. So just reinforcing those little points. And remember, it's that little twirl and the twist out. Reinforcing that brown on the edge of the heart there. Let's take this back. Around here. And just getting little delicate touches of that brown to follow up and do another little layer of paint here. Around the edges. Reinforce this little pumpkins over the top here. Those soft little curves. Bit of water, and again, twirl into that paint. Need a darker brown again. I'm adding a little bit more black into that brown to darken it. A little twirl into that. Reinforcing some of these little darker brown lines in here. Come back in a little bit more of that yellow over the top here. Reinforce the lines, but then I need to come back in and hit the light again over the top. And then when I do that, that yellow even softly blends with even more of that brown. Some little touches again of our yellow. Bring back out the little brightness, little touches, and just lift off and pull. Do a little touch for the thickness and then pull out to the thin, slender part of the petal with a light hand. Again, a little ball of paint on the tip of a little bit. As it's closer to the center, there's a thicker touch. And then you lift off with a light hand and it gets to be more delicate and tapers to a fine point to the edge of the petal. We'll do that all the way around. You can turn your canvas as you do that. Just playing a little bit here on the rose, adding a little bit more of that bright yellow over the top. And then I want a little bit more of a highlight here on my pumpkin. So it's a beautiful orange pumpkin just the way it is, but I'm going to do a little bit more of that super light peach, more of a yellow right over the top. I'm going to do just like a little tiny touch of an accent there right on the top. And then this pumpkin up here, a little bit of water, a little bit of this white. I can do a little tiny accent of white over the top here too. And come back into that little dark gray and just reinforce my little lines one more time. A little touch of that lighter shade around my stem here. Again, just a touch more of that light gray with that white. And then let's have more fun with our berries too. So I'm going to grab my mama brush and some more of that. Oh, you know what? One more thing. Sorry. A little bit. Let's get more of those little brown twigs happening. Very delicate little twigs. I forgot to do that. I'll twirl into the brown. So you just make little tiny little lines here. Those are the little little twigs that come out. And here's a little twig happening there. Little tiny branches. Right, now let's have some more of those little red flowers. So the end of Mama here, a plastic end. And we can start to really have some fun with those little berries everywhere. You can have a few of them just really kind of cascading over the top. And off to the side, so they, are overlapping over the background. Really makes it look more natural. And add a few more over here. Really close to being done. Now, I was going to tell you about this letter. So this is all dry. And what I highly recommend for beginners is at the very least using this to help reinforce your letter, whatever letter we provide for y'all that you custom request. You can use this The key is you just have to make sure that the paint is completely dry. Because if the paint is wet, it'll just kill your permanent marker, and that's sad. I don't really use it anymore, so I'm gonna be really careful around that red paint because I just did it and it's wet. So let's come right around it. I'll have to touch that up with paint here in a minute. But if you want, you don't have to worry about it at all. You could just let everything set up and dry and then come back, you know, after about 20 minutes or so, just to be sure. And then do all this with your permanent marker. And it allows for you to be very precise without any concern. It's just a lot easier to manipulate than the paint. And then one other thing you can do is you can start with this, with your permanent marker, and then you can touch up with paint. So I'm going to show you that. Okay, see, I'm getting really close to wet paint in there, so I'm going to stop. Use a little bit. And our black, I got a little bit of water to the black too, to make it, to thin out the paint, make it easier to manipulate into a small area, do that little twist in there. And I've got this guy to do. See, and once you've got your black permanent marker line down, so you can come right over the top with paint too. That way you've got that very precise edge. And then you can just give it a more painterly look over the top, where you feel comfortable. Or you can just let the permanent marker be the only line that you know, you can just leave it just like that. It looks great just as is too, if you don't feel comfortable with this part of the process. And then if you like a little bit of that berry coming in over the top, that's really easy to come back in and do. So I'll take my lava brush here. And I'll just redot that. That's kind of fun. You know, you can do the same thing down here if you want a little bit of overlap. It's also really nice. Very, very pretty. Okay, I think we are done. It's looking really cute. Do a few more little berries up here. Hear that little ending. Sometimes it's hard to know when to quit. A few more berries. All right, I think that's good. All right. Good job, everybody. Okay, so again, all the supplies that you need are on our website. And I did forget to talk about the signature. You could do that here with, this is all really dry now, so you can actually just do this with your little permanent marker. Okay. All right, so again, all the supplies on our website, tipsyartist.com. We thank you so much for painting with us today. It's been a pleasure. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And look forward to painting with you again really, really soon. Toodles. Love y'all.